Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us in this first installment of Sipping with Survivors. I am Rachel Brooks, and I am an author and a speaker and a survivor of sexual assault. I went through a very brutal sexual assault about 10 years ago, or actually it was 12 years ago now, and I have written a memoir called Beads, a memoir about falling apart and putting yourself back together again. And I'm just so excited to start my first Instagram Live series where I am really trying to create more conversation around the taboo topic of rape, further raising awareness for survivors, and offering support to those who are wanting to share their stories and are recovering from trauma, and really just allowing people to not feel like they are alone. And so this series will be in 4 parts, and I am partnering with 4 amazing groups and organizations that have decided to carry on this conversation with me. Our first of which being Survivors to Thrivers, and Tambry is going to be joining us shortly from that group. And they are an organization that aims to create a supportive community that brings light and awareness to the shame and silence that surrounds abuse, and to encourage survivors to find strength and freedom by finding their voice and claiming a story of transformation and growth leading to empowered lives. So I am going to go ahead and get Tambry on our, let's see, here we go. Okay, Tambry should be joining us. Here she is. All right. Hi, Tambry.
Hey,
Thank you so much for joining me. And I'm just so excited for this series, and I think that you are the perfect way to kick this off. If you just want to say a little bit about yourself, I have told all of our viewers your mission for Survivors to Thrivers, and then we will kick off the conversation.
okay, thank you. And it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
So, a little bit about me, and we probably get a little more into my story, but I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And it actually was something that I repressed for years. And then I became aware of it as a grown adult out in the corporate world. It kind of came up for me. And through my healing work, I recognized that some of my limiting beliefs were keeping me in unhealthy patterns. And so I had to look at those. And so one of those unhealthy patterns was marrying abusers, because I feel worthy of being treated well.
Yep.
And so I had to do that healing work and really believe that I was worth just positive relationships and all that. And also it was really important for me to do the mind, body, spirit work. I couldn't just think through. I really had to do that. So I did a lot of work around that. And 3.5 years ago now, when the hashtag #MeToo hands started going up in a big way, it was put on my heart to do something. And the something looks like, I thought, there are these people, these brave women who are coming, and they're sharing, they're raising their hand, they're saying it happened, but are they like me and still stuck? And have they been able to do their full healing? And so that's why I founded Going Forward Survivors to Thrivers, to try and be a voice of hope, a voice of healing, and hoping, like you, in sharing my story, that others can feel a kindred spirit, and someone who can just help them see that there is light. That's why I named my book "Awakening the Light," because I want light to be lit in each one of these special souls. So I don't know if that's enough about me, but that might be enough to get us started.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And I too was so heavily impacted by the Me Too movement in 2017. And that's actually what prompted me to leave my corporate position. And very similar to you, I just felt this need to get my story out on paper. And so I set out to do that, and was able to successfully work through that, and also came across other things that I didn't realize that I was still struggling with my journey from my attack. And just, going through the justice system and realizing how important my support system was. And, I wanted others to feel like, hey, this isn't just happening to necessarily people that are reporting it to the media. It's happening to everybody. I mean, it could be your neighbor, it could be a best friend, it could be someone that is suffering in silence and you just have no idea. So I think that it's so important to continue to share those stories and share the journeys that people like you and I have had, that I think everyone can relate to in some way, where it's, it doesn't necessarily have to be rape. It can be, maybe you're going through a bad divorce, or you're in an abusive relationship. I think that, or losing a child, or I think trauma can manifest itself in many different ways. And, one of the great things that I love about your book is the ability for people to journal while they read it. Because I'm a huge fan of journaling, and I think that is such a key element for kind of digging deeper into your beliefs and your struggles that you're having. It's almost like when you think about questions and write them down, it things become more clear to you in that process of really spending the time, whether it be by yourself or in a group. So I wanted to ask, what prompted you to go in that direction with your book, making it more of an interactive journaling type of story?
It's interesting. I am a huge journaler myself, and that actually benefited me because I was able to go back into my journals and so get some specific examples. And that was one of the things people encouraged me to do, is share some, go into a little more detail. And I don't know about you, but a lot of times there's things we suppress, and so we might not have, right? And so by going back and looking at my journal, I was able to pull things forward. And I would have never seen myself as an author. I would have not seen myself as putting my story to paper.
Yeah.
So it was one of those that I didn't want it to be a book about me. I wanted it to be about the journey. And so I feel like I'm a surrogate. I kind of help you begin to walk along a journey, and people find themselves, they find themselves in different parts of my story. And like you said, some people have read it and said, I'm not a sexual abuse survivor, but I'm a survivor of other kinds of abuse.
Right.
And so for me, there were two reasons. One, I wanted you to be on the journey with me, so that it really kind of helped you, and even from the very beginning, begin to reflect and take it in. And I think also this is a heavy topic. It's something that's hard to delve into. And so by kind of interspersing questions and kind of stepping into it gradually, I think that also helps people begin to take it at a pace that they can work through. And you want to just live in my journey, you can, and not answer the questions. But if something really, sticks with you, and I even encourage people to have a separate journal. So if you've got more than just what the book allows, elaborate and capture that, because it really does kind of free you from some of those, either free you from some of the things or help you become aware. And I think that's another key piece, is become aware of what's really kind of deep in you.
Absolutely. And I think I can relate to that so much, because at the beginning of my journey, shortly after everything happened, there was just such a intense amount of shame that I felt. And it took me a really long time to, I think, even process things enough to get them down onto paper. So I think the way that you start these questions gradually, it allows people to not be inundated with all of their thoughts at once, but more to take it kind of in that step by step. And I think it's so great because, like you said, you can do this individually, or you can, take it more to a group setting, or it can also even prompt a conversation that you didn't even know that you needed to have, whether that be with a therapist or a friend or someone in your support system. So I think that that is really effective in helping others kind of come along that journey with you, as you had mentioned. Um, Changing gears a little bit, I really resonated with one of the quotes that is in your book. You have so many amazing quotes, by the way. I'm a big quote person. And one of them was that you said, "I'm grateful that I live in a time when our society finally understands that moving on and leaving the pain of the past untouched can cause continued pain and issues." And I think that really speaks to how you realized that there were things that you repressed. I can certainly relate to a time when I felt like there wasn't that understanding that existed, that this was still so taboo, and that we were expected to just, you know, brush it under the rug and be fine. Can you speak a little bit more to just, again, you know, that realization and just to that quote in general?
And you mentioned the shaming that can happen
Yeah.
to victims, and that's still a problem. And
Oh,
so, and so, so I think that it is so, but at least right now, and I'll go just even to the mental health community, they are also really trying to destigmatize mental health,
yeah.
destigmatize going to therapy, because it truly is. I mean, we are mind, body, and spirit. We are all those things. And so we have to do that healing work. And it was about 2.5 years ago when I was introduced to a book that's called The Body Keeps the Score. And when I read it, it was so wonderful because I'm pretty strong intuitive, so I don't keep a lot of details in my mind, but as I'm reading it, it like gave evidence to every single thing I knew deeply in my body, in my heart, in my spirit. And the title itself, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
And and my therapist told me one time, she said, Tambry, the mind may forget, but the body always remembers.
That is, that is one thing that I have never even thought about really before. I mean, because, yeah, I think there are things that trigger you that may not may not pop up into your mind per se, but you all of a sudden are having like a physical response to it, or you're getting anxious. And it's so true that yes, you can forget, but in so many ways, things that happen along your healing journey can manifest themselves in ways that you were not expecting. And so I think that's just incredible that you were able to uncover that in that book. And I personally will definitely be checking that out because
I picked it up just in case you guys wanted to see what it looked like. Tabs.
That's great.
One of the things it talks about is, so the CDC and Kaiser Permanente did a study, and they had 17,000 participants. Okay, so we got a lot of people proving this. And they went back and they had them take it's called adverse childhood experiences. And so it's things that happen to us, trauma that's created in us. And they correlated it to health studies, okay? And so they have found increased cancer, increased heart issues, not just the depression and all these other kinds of things. And like for me, joint pain, you store the pain in your joints. And so my cousin I shouldn't have said that, but someone telling me that,
You're fine.
let the past be the past. If you let the past be the past, anticipate having, again, physical pain, internal. I mean, your body will hold that trauma and that pain until you find healthy ways to release it. And so to me, it gives us, if we needed permission, it gives us permission to take the time to do our healing work.
Absolutely. Well, and I think one thing that you mentioned, that whole notion of the past needing to stay in the past, I definitely was told that very early on in my journey. And that was really challenging for me because I had all this guilt and I had all this shame from my sexual assault, but yet I was also beating myself up for why am I not moving on with my life? Like, so that's what I did. I tried the best that I could to move forward. And I went down a dark spiral of drinking to cope. I was in intense therapy. I was taking medication, all the meanwhile trying to keep all of these I was trying to keep the past in the past, where I didn't want my coworkers or members of my family or certain friends to even have any idea what happened to me. And so I talk about this a little bit in my book, where I almost created this separate persona of myself, and I named it my face. And so I would put this face on, and years later, when I started writing and started coming out with the book and talking a little bit more about what happened to me and my story, people came out and said, oh my gosh, like I would have had no idea. And I said, I worked really hard, and I don't think I realized how hard I did work at it until I was writing that chapter in my book, at this face, this persona of trying to keep the past in the past. And all it did was just make it that much more painful and difficult for me, because I was trying so hard to essentially like lead, I don't want to say a double life, but just trying to keep things as normal as possible so that I could quote unquote move forward and continue doing all the things that I wanted to do in my life. And so, hearing you and hopefully hearing our conversation will allow viewers and others who wherever they are in their healing journeys, just to know that you don't have to keep the past in the past. You can talk about it, and that doesn't necessarily have to be with someone who knows you. It can be a therapist, or it can be reaching out to me or you, or it's one of those things where I feel like having that support group and that village, however it looks, is just so key to being able to heal and move forward in that way. So I wanted to move, so kind of segueing in, if you could give 3 tips, and I know that I'm sure you have several, for someone who is about to be on or is on currently on a healing journey, what would some of those be?
Well, I'll start with what you were just saying about community and seeking to find a community. That's one of the reasons why we created Survivors to Thrivers, to kind of help people realize we put blogs out to try and, twice a month, give people encouragement and let them know they are not alone. What's unfortunate is that many times our existing community doesn't provide the support we need. And you kind of were alluding to that. So, your family, they may not be able to support you for a variety of reasons. They may not be able to support you the way you need to be supported. And so that's hard, because that's where you want to go.
Yeah.
And your close friends, and like you, a lot of people, when they found out my story, they were shocked, because I was, again, the uber professional, because that's how I had to keep it together.
You had to. It's almost like that was, if you didn't do that, you would shatter to pieces. And I think that as much as it was detrimental in some ways, that's the only thing I knew to do at that period of time, for those couple of years. That's the only thing I knew to do to keep myself from completely losing it, essentially.
And I would say that with the healing journey, we are hoping for people. One of the things that woke me up to the goodness was, I was seen as this kind of, I don't know if rigid's the right word, but very together professional person.
Oh, yes.
That can't feel the joy. You can't expand into the goodness either. And so again,
Right.
surrounding yourself with people that can encourage the fullness of you. And that's one of my big hopes for everybody is to be able to really examine the fullness of you. So that kind of gets to the second thing would be, really examining your limiting beliefs, the things
Mhm.
that were created in your mind. Mine again started really young, and so they're really well etched in me. But that you're not,
Right.
and how to really work through that,
Yeah.
and realize, but if I don't work through it, I'm going to keep finding myself in these unhealthy patterns.
Exactly. And it's one of those where the more and more you tell yourself that, if you tell yourself that enough, you truly
Oh,
believe it.
absolutely.
I mean, it's yeah, it is, and it's debilitating because you then approach other aspects of life that you may not have realized with this limiting belief of, oh, I'm not worthy, so I'm not going to pursue this relationship because of X, Y, and Z. I'm not worthy, or I'm not worthy of pursuing this job because of everything that I went through, and I'm not going to be good enough. So yes, I can totally relate to that.
Starts expanding. The
Yeah.
possibilities expand, and it's that too. When you open yourself up to it, it comes, and and it can come in a different way. It can come in a way that might be exactly how you maybe mapped it out, but it's really pretty amazing. And so the third thing I would say is, and this gets a little bit back to the body keeps the score, really honor all three aspects of your healing. My awakening came through a panic attack, and that's what led me to start, kind of digging through the layers. And so my body was the one that really helped me work through. And so sometimes when your mind might get confused, or things don't come up, just listen to what your body knows, and believe it. And that's one of the really cool things that we're starting to, again, now we're in a time where we're accepting a lot of different ways of healing. So we
Yeah.
used to deal with, we're used to the Western medicine, and you take a pill or you do whatever, and we're increasingly embracing Eastern medicine. And the book I was mentioning, it talks about the value of yoga, the value of mindfulness,
Yep.
and the value of breath, and so recognizing that you are in control. You are in control of your breath. You're in control of, kind of being mindful of your body. So recognizing that, doing the healing work, like you said, whether it be with the mind piece, kind of processing with someone or through a journal, and then the spirit piece, whatever that looks like for you. There's a lot of different ways to get in touch with the divine or a higher power that really can help you feel a sense of support that you can't get from necessarily that community group. But for me, that has been really powerful and helpful.
Absolutely. And I love that you talk about, it's not so much that you can give people a pill and send them on their way. I think that one thing for me that I'm so appreciative of, especially, is that just therapy in general, I think it has become a lot more normalized. And speaking more to that mental health component, I mean, there were periods of time in my journey that I've been on, where I've looked back and I was in some pretty scary spots, just with suicidal thoughts, and how am I going to possibly dig myself out of this depression? And I think the combination, like what you talk about, like kind of listening to all three parts of what you mentioned, and not gravitating towards necessarily what society tells us to, like, oh, why would you go to therapy, like what good is that going to do, or the stigma around antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. But I think that if hearing more conversations about those elements, and feeling that there's no kind of coming back to that shame element again, there's no shame in admitting that, yes, I go to therapy, I take medication, I still do. But I think for so long people were not, people were not okay with that. Like it was something that was kept so secretive. So I think being able to explore other ways of healing more on the Eastern viewpoints, I think is also, it just continues to give people more options to allow them to not feel like they are completely stuck, which is, again, just so important and part of one of my main goals in sharing my story and being more open about what happened to me and not keeping it so bottled up, is that very notion that you don't have to be stuck. You don't have to feel alone. You can move forward. And, a big message in my book is being able to get to the other side of trauma, where it's not something that defines you, but is a part of who you are. So it doesn't, I think that my rape defined me for a really long time. And that was also one of those things that I don't think I realized until I was writing my book. I don't think I realized how much of a hold it had on me until I started to release that and get it out all on paper. And I started remembering things that I was not recalling at all, but because I had started kind of in this like chronological order of like all the things that happened, it was so therapeutic for me. And it was a huge part of my healing, even though I started writing the book like 10 years after, because I think I had gotten to that point, not so much a limiting belief, but just I'd gotten to that point where I was like, okay, like I'm fine. But in reality, like it's still a work in progress always. And it's, again, not something that that has to have a hold on you, that I realized was my case for 10 years. But I think your book is just such an amazing way for people to work through different parts of trauma. And I am just so thankful that you were willing to meet with me. And, I think that this conversation is just a great kickoff for many other conversations. And I just want everyone who's viewing or who comes across our conversation to know that you can absolutely reach out to us via Instagram, or we both have websites. And I just really cannot thank you enough. And just wanted to see if you had any parting words or words of wisdom for as we wrap up here.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I heard the last piece you were saying is finding your voice is part of the healing, and claiming your story. And then the other thing I would say is that it's we have different layers, and so but the layers are easier to go through, and that's why I think some of the practices we're talking about, the mindfulness practices, the yoga practices, the breathing, all of that is so important always, because there will be different parts that might come up. And so and I guess the last piece
that also just brings you back into just a more peaceful and calming mindset to be able to tackle those deeper issues or those limiting beliefs. I think when we can approach something where we are more relaxed and more centered, if you will, and not just a ball of jumbling anxiety, as I can still get to that point. I think that again allows those breakthroughs to happen.
Mm-hmm. So when I talk to people, there seem to be a lot of us that have a sense of unworthiness. And so I guess I would want anybody looking at this to know that you are worthy, and you are worthy of the healing work. And like Rachel said, we're here to support you, and the Survivors to Thrivers organization, that's why we exist. So you're not alone in this journey.
Perfect. Well, that is the perfect way to end our conversation. And I just, again, want to thank you so much. And definitely, we'll keep in touch. And I would love to connect.
The whole sign up that I just worked on.
Yeah. I think
I had it backwards, buddy. It's Survivors to Thrive.
Survivors.com.
.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So
Perfect.
check us out. Thank
I
you.
thank you so much again, Tambry, and just look forward to continuing the conversation with you and others, and seeing how your book and your story continue to positively affect others. So, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so
All right, bye.
much. Bye.